40 armed men, one train, isolated in the dead of night, and 100 terrified passengers. It is a hopeless equation, a story that should have ended in robbery, in violence, and in tragedy. But on this night, the 40 robbers made one fatal miscalculation. They did not realize that on that train was a man who was a walking, breathing weapon. And in his bag, he carried a blade that was forged in the mountains of Nepal to do the impossible. This is the story of the Gurkha who stood alone and defeated 40 robbers with his Kukri. To understand what happened on that train, you must first understand the two forces that would collide with the 40 robbers. The first is the weapon, the Kukri. It is not a knife. It is a fusion of an axe and a sword. The unique forward-curving blade places the center of gravity midway down the steel, giving it the chopping power of a hatchet in a much smaller package. A well-aimed blow can sever a limb, yet its razor-sharp inner edge allows for fine, delicate work. For the people of Nepal, it is a tool for building a home, a knife for preparing a meal, and a weapon for defending it. At the base of every blade is a notch, the kaudi. Some say it is a symbol of a sacred cow's hoof. Others a tool to stop blood from running onto the handle. Whatever its purpose, it is a mark of authenticity. It signifies that this is not just a blade, it is the soul of a nation. And then there is the warrior, the Gurkha. 200 years, these men from the mountain kingdom of Nepal have served in the British Army, earning a reputation as the most feared and respected infantry soldiers on earth. They are defined by their discipline, their loyalty, and a courage that borders on the supernatural. Their motto is not a boast, it is a simple statement of fact: Kafar hunu banda, marnu ramro. Better to die than be a coward. Their reputation is so absolute, it was perfectly summarized by an opposing general who said, "If you have a Gurkha on your side, you have a friend for life. If you are fighting a Gurkha, you are already dead." The legendary Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw put it even more simply. If a man says he is not afraid of dying, he is either lying or he is a Gurkha. Our hero Bishnu Shrestha was one of these men. A retired soldier of the Indian Army's Gurkha Rifles, his years of service were behind him. But his training, his discipline, and his spirit were a part of his soul. He was on his way home, and he was about to prove what happens when 40 men who have no fear of the law come face to face with one man who has no fear of death. The Maurya Express was moving through West Bengal, a routine overnight journey. For Bishnu Shrestha, it was the final leg of a long trip home. After years of service, he was returning to his family. Like everyone else on that train, his mind was on tomorrow, on reunions, on a life of peace. The journey was over. An ambush. A gang of 40 dacoits, armed robbers, had stopped the train and boarded the cars. They moved with brutal efficiency, a tide of violence and fear sweeping through the carriages. They took money, jewelry, laptops, anything of value. For the passengers, there was nothing to do but comply. They were trapped, helpless, miles from any hope of rescue. But Bishnu Shrestha was not panicking. His years of training took over. He remained seated, watching. His mind was a calculator of violence. 40 men, armed, disorganized. He was one with a blade in his bag. The odds were impossible, so he waited, and he watched. The robbers swarmed into his compartment. They put a knife to his throat and demanded his valuables. He complied. His money, his phone, they were not worth dying for. He remained calm, giving them no reason to escalate. For a moment it seemed the violence would pass him by. But then they saw her, an 18-year-old girl, the daughter of a fellow passenger, hiding in the corner. The robbers' motive shifted from theft to something far uglier. They grabbed the girl, intending to have their way with her. And in that instant, the equation changed. This was the line. A line that no soldier, no Gurkha, could ever allow to be crossed. His duty as a passenger was over. His duty as a human being had just begun. Before the men could even process what was happening, the Kukri was in his hand. The narrow confines of the train car, their greatest advantage, now became their tomb. Bishnu Shrestha was not a brawler. He was a Gurkha. Every move was precise, economical, and devastatingly effective. The first man fell, then the second. The robbers, who had been swaggering with the confidence of predators, were now faced with a force of nature. They swarmed him, a chaotic mob of blades and fists. He met them with the cold, disciplined geometry of a warrior. The forward-weighted blade of the Kukri, designed for the open battlefields of history, proved just as terrifying in a 3-foot-wide corridor. They were 40 against 1. Sheer numbers began to take their toll. A blade slashed Bishnu's arm. Another cut deep into his left hand, nearly severing it. But the pain was irrelevant. In the Gurkha mindset, a wound is just information. He switched the Kukri to his other hand and continued the fight. He fought for 20 minutes, a whirlwind of steel and righteous fury. He was wounded, bleeding, but he would not stop. He would not fall. He would not be a coward. And the robbers broke. The men who had terrorized 100 innocent people were now consumed by a single primal instinct to escape the Gurkha and his blade. And then, silence. The 20-minute battle that felt like an eternity was over. The surviving robbers had fled, jumping from the train into the darkness, abandoning their loot and their wounded comrades. The immediate threat was gone. The young woman was safe. Every passenger who had been robbed now had their belongings back, recovered from the bags the fleeing robbers had dropped. Order was restored, not by the law, but by the will of a single man. The final tally was like something from a historical epic. 3 robbers were dead. 8 more were gravely wounded and captured. The rest had vanished. Bishnu Shrestha himself was severely injured. His dominant left hand was cut down to the bone, the tendons severed. The doctors would later tell him he would likely never be able to use it properly again. The story became an instant legend. The lone Gurkha who took on 40 bandits to save a girl's honor. He was a national hero. But for Bishnu Shrestha, the fight wasn't about heroism, it was about duty. The world tried to label Bishnu Shrestha a hero. The Indian Army offered him promotions. The family of the young woman whose life and honor he saved offered him a fortune, enough to live in comfort for the rest of his days. He humbly and firmly turned it all down. His explanation was as simple and as profound as the Gurkha creed itself. "Fighting the enemy in a battle is my duty as a soldier," he said. "Taking on the robbers was my duty as a human being." His actions on that train were not for fame or for money. They were a pure, undiluted expression of the Gurkha spirit, a timeless, violent, and beautiful reminder that in the face of true evil, one good person, with the courage to act and the skill to win, can be an army.